Let me double check. Everything's working. I hope so. Are we ready, folks?
Yes.
Ready?
What time do you want me to go to?
I'm ready.
What was it?
One.
Sorry. I didn't hold push to talk button then. I want you to go to 6 hours and 1 minute.
6 hours,
Precisely.
1 minute.
Well,
Yeah.
6 hours and
That's fine. That's fine.
will do.
It starts at 6 hours, 1 minute, and 10 seconds.
Okay. So shall we do our introduction? You know what? We'll do our introduction after we've watched this part. It's gonna be like the interlogue.
Wait, so you want to watch this in its entirety, and then we do an introduction?
I mean, we can do. I'm gonna edit it in post fries like a big boy.
All right. So just say when you're ready to start it.
Let's go for it.
I think that we have another donation to read out from Fritz. I'm starting to realize something. These people are afraid of your video. They're afraid of watching your video because they're terrified that they'll actually listen to you and end up disliking the film. Yeah, that's a fair assessment to make, I guess.
Honestly, that's what I like about Mark the Cyborg's comment, where he's just like, "Hey, I like this movie, but these arguments are really good." It's like, yeah, that's true. And this is the thing: is you can choose to engage with it or not. But if you're going to argue that you're wrong, then you should watch the video.
Yeah. Francine asks me, Southpaw, do you hate your audience? I don't hate my audience. I've been growing increasingly disgusted with parts of the EFAP audience, though. Disgusted for like political reasons at points, and also been receiving a ton of disingenuous feedback in general. I get unfavorably called like knockoff Wolf, or I'm called a failed version of Mahler. Someone even then recently said I'm like Rags but without the charisma. So it's like, oh, so I'm
oh god, that's uncalled for.
I'm knockoffs of all 3 of the EFAP hosts apparently. Cool. But yeah, EFAP chat's been very tismy lately, and that was why it was so satisfactory to include that last bit in my video, where it's just me basically rubbing in the fact that I'm totally right in their faces. So I'm yeah, also like the fact that so many of them have been hypocritical when it comes to this movie, Spider-Man 2. They using TLJ style defenses for it. Oh yeah, I am a knockoff of Kimba. That's correct. The next time I see someone say I'm a knockoff of Wolf, I'm gonna say, yeah, and the Lion King's a knockoff of Kimba. And they're gonna be like, what? I'll be what? Are the EFAP audience alt-right? Well,
I wouldn't go that far.
I hate to say it, but there is a part of them that seem to be, yes.
Okay.
I'm not saying it's a large part. I'm not saying it's a large part, but I think that's fair to say that there's some genuinely sexist, racist, homophobic, and transphobic people in that audience. And that's not all of them. There's quite a few of them that are rather reasonable.
Well, to be fair, comment section in the Mandalorian videos don't help.
Oh yeah, the Mandalorian videos. You've got I'm trying to think, like, you know, some stuff I've seen in like the Last of Us 2 comment sections as well. But no, Sophistic, you haven't made me disappointed. You're one of the good ones. But
You're
yeah,
an ally.
yeah.
Oh.
All right. Is anything else, or do you think that?
I think that about covers it. We had a really good stream today. We went for about
that
6
was it,
hours.
by the way.
So
That was the section.
Oh.
Yeah, so that was quite a mouthful, right?
Dude, that's insane. Like, yeah, Sophie Autistic, you're not one of the bad ones. You're an ally. Oh, that's cringe, bro. That's like that's straight out of the left. I don't know if he's being sarcastic.
You're an ally.
You're an ally.
Okay, Alpha, he's not being sarcastic, right? This is 100% genuine.
This,
And that's confirmed by the Twitter post he made later on. He really does think this.
wow. And like, I've got to ask, Bryce, because you're the man. You're the man with the plan here. You're
Yes,
the man
I am the man with the plan.
who heard the ultimate research document, right?
Indeed.
What exactly is it that the EFAP audience are doing that makes them racist, sexist, alt-rightists?
Okay, well, he's talking about. He gave a few examples, right? He talked about comments in The Last of Us 2 videos, like the ones they covered on EFAP. Then he mentioned the comments on the Mandalorian video. But since he doesn't specify, what kind of comments they are, I haven't been able to find exactly what he's talking about. And outside of those examples, he doesn't really give any other, examples in this section that we just watched. He only gave some examples later on in a Twitter post he made. So, right here, he's literally just saying, yes, parts of the EFAP audience are all of these things, throwing out all of these labels, and he's not really justifying or clarifying it with anything, which is kind of an asshole move, to be honest.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if he infers that, I don't know, one of them possibly used the N-word once, so he's like, wow, that's racist. Like, not even in like a malicious context. They just said the N-word comedically.
Well, that's
Wow.
That's a funny thing you raise, Alpha, because the hosts of EFAP have notoriously used such words in the past. Rags in particular.
No, not just the host of EFAP, right? Because EFAP as a community, it's allowed to use the N-word casually. And we can see this because it's been used on the show by hosts, it's been used by guests, it's been used by certain mods, and it's been used by Southpaw. So
See,
it can't be that.
this is the thing, right? To say that we're somewhat making an inference saying that his definitions of sexism, of racism, of what he considers to be homophobic, I'm not entirely sure what they are, and I would quite like to see him define what those things are, because
Well, he kind of did later on. That's what we have to look at.
okay,
I just want to say, right, I watched the entire 6-hour video to see if there were any like racist or homophobic or transphobic comments that led to this person in the audience to ask this question. There wasn't. So, like, this whole discussion about the EFAP audience, it just sort of comes out of nowhere. It had nothing to do with what they were talking about previously.
and it's kind
That's,
of
that's why it's kind of weird.
I find it.
Go ahead, Alpha.
I find it kind of funny that this guy rides the coattails of EFAP to, get popular, and then he shits on them on his own podcast.
Which was something I wanted to raise, where it's, imagine, right? This would be the equivalent of, like, say Meme goes off and he does his own podcast, and then he, like, on a podcast, he's like, yeah, no, just, like, the PF Discord, they're all just, like, the racist. It's like, not all of them, but there's a few in there where there's racists and homophobes and sexists and stuff, You're shitting on your friend's podcast. He's shitting on my podcast and my friends. He should, like, Southpaw right here is shitting on Mauler. He's shitting on Rags, on his entire... Most of his audience come from EFAP. Without EFAP, he was a nobody. And he's shitting on all of those people simultaneously by going, part of your community is... Do you know what the thing is, right? I accept there more than likely are racists within the EFAP community. But it's how he struggles to define them is the issue. Where it's the things that these...
We have to define what a racist is then. Otherwise, we can't exactly say, we don't really know what he's talking about. That's the thing.
Yeah, if someone uses like the N-word casually, I'm gonna reference it as the N-word because this is obviously getting uploaded, potentially if Josh gets off his ass. shots fired.
I'm gonna cut that part.
But I'm going to reference it as the N-word. If someone's going to turn around and be like, oh, you know it's bad, you know it's racist because you won't even say it. I will say it like in a one-on-one conversation. I just won't say it here because YouTube is draconian with its laws, which is why I'll reference it as the N-word. But if someone uses it comedically and casually and not in malicious intent, they're not a racist.
And this is where, like, with Southpaw in particular, I find a lot of the things that he said, what he'll do is he'll say, you doing X is, so you saying this is racist, or you, like, some of the examples we're going to look at later on will kind of explain this in greater detail, but he'll bring something up and he'll say, you're a racist or you're homophobic for doing this. But he'll have done something similar, or somebody that he's affiliated with will have done something similar in the past.
Yeah.
And I'm kind of sitting there thinking to myself, at what point then do you incriminate yourself? Because you're accusing other people, like, that's all well and good, okay? If you're saying this is the standard that you want to set, okay, let's do that. Let's have that as your standard. If saying the N-word is racist to you, that's fine. It's racist for you as well. If you use it, that makes you a racist. So what he's done is, he'll apply this standard to other people, but he's not equal with it. Like, I don't know if we will, but if you look at something like the Anomaly situation, where a lot of the time he was criticizing Anomaly for things that people in the EFAP community did, Wolf himself did to other people, but he doesn't apply that equally. And my thing is never, like, I don't want to sit and point the gun in the other direction and go, hey, this person did this thing as well, punish them. It's purely that if you're gonna call somebody out for being a racist because of saying one word, every single other person that said that word in this context is also a racist. You have to apply that absolutely equally across the board. And if you're not gonna do that, well then, you don't hold any water. Shut the fuck up. You've got nothing to add to the conversation.
It's clearly grasping at straws to just discredit someone.
Yeah.
I think the most confusing label, right, is that he throws out that parts of the EFAP audience is alt-right. And the problem is that alt-right is such a loosely defined term that nobody really knows what that means. I don't even think Southpaw knows what he means by that.
Yeah.
Because his friend said, I don't want to go that far. So does his friend think that Southpaw thinks that parts of the EFAP audience are white supremacists?
I mean, his friends looked
because that would be going that far.
His friends looked so awkward in that chat. They're like, I guess we're done? Is there anything else you want to bring up?
They didn't even really say anything.
Yeah, because there was fuck all to say. It's kind of like...
I think the alt-right thing is kind of like the nail in the coffin there. It's an unfalsifiable hypothesis. Because the terms are so loosely defined that you could, like, pick anything.
You could apply it to anything.
Anything, yeah. And it's just, it's kind of purpose-built to just write off the EFAP audience.
But the thing is, right, I definitely do want to clarify, he doesn't say all of them, he says parts of it.
Yeah, but he doesn't clarify what parts of the EFAP audience are
exactly
these labels.
That's the thing, is that it's part of the unfalsifiable hypothesis. You're like, oh, well, some of them are racist and sexist. And
but
stuff.
that's the thing, though. You could say that about absolutely anything. I'm sure.
Exactly.
It's such a useless statement in that sense, because if it is that big an issue, right, where he's saying that he's noticing it, and he's saying it's an issue, which, if it was true, it would be an issue, and I'm not saying that it's not true, but let's assume that it is. If it is true, what's he doing about it?
Nothing. I mean, he's complaining about it, but he's not really doing anything about it.
And
he's just preaching to the choir, basically.
But if he really cared about it, right? If I'm in Southpaw's position, and I'm concerned about this group of racists and homophobes in the EFAP community, what do? Personally, I would go to Muller, I would speak to Rags and Muller about it, I would speak to the Discord mods and Muller's Discord, and I would try and get the issue resolved behind closed doors and try and make sure that the people that are doing these things are punished without tarnishing the rest of the EFAP audience with this brush. But he just went straight in there and went, yeah, fuck all of you pretty much. By not defining who those people are, by not giving examples and by setting a standard by which people need to adhere to not be tarred with that brush, you're handing ammunition to the people. Since, like, TLJ have been saying that the EFAP audience is racist and sexist and homophobic. Like, do you remember that was the early EFAP days? If you're part of that audience, you're probably
they
a part
used
of
to
these
make
other groups.
EFAP are the guys who makes fun of that. They make fun of the people who constantly throw out these labels, who label and dismiss.
I
That's
find
why
it-
it's kind of ironic.
Yeah, it's so ironic that he's become the very person that they genuinely despise.
It's become the thing he swore to destroy.
I didn't want to use that quote, goddammit.
Okay, well, it's not just throwing out labels, right? It's also the fact that he says, I was totally right about Spider-Man 2. Because he briefly talked about that in that segment. And I wanted to rub it in chat's face how right I was. I mean, you're being...
such a cunty thing to do.
That is the kind of thing, right?
Yeah, very, very smug.
And this is like, again, we've spoken about it on this podcast, we've spoken about it behind closed doors, EFAP have spoken about it themselves. One of the key things that you should never do whenever you have a video, you should be as close to certain that you've said everything within your video, and you've said everything right, the editing's flawless, and all these brilliant things. You have to make sure that your product is as good as possible. But you're never certain that it's perfect. I've never once heard Mueller say, I made a perfect video. Because there's always that off chance that I've said something wrong, I've misquoted somebody. There's always going to be that chance that you've screwed something up, no matter how small. And the fact that he's taking the angle and going, he's so close-minded about it that, oh yeah, I'm right about everything. It's so disingenuous.
Yeah, and dude, Josh, he literally said that on Twitter. He said it multiple times that his Spider-Man 2 video was 100% correct. There are no flaws.
And then he just assumes, he like arrogantly assumes that anyone who criticizes him hasn't even watched my video. You haven't even watched it. You don't even know what you're talking about. I've watched it. It's wrong. At least, like, don't get me wrong, right? Spider-Man 2 has flaws, man. Like when he brings up the scene where Doc Ock throws the car at what he assumes is a normal civilian Peter Parker.
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah. I get it. I totally get it. And that's a flaw. But you can't, but like, there's so many things with the Mary Jane thing. I don't know who's come to him about that, or if he's just selectively cherry picking counter arguments. But
I mean, okay, to be fair, right? The Mary Jane part, that's the worst part of the video.
100%.
It's the most incorrect.
Yeah.
Like, there's times where, like, whenever I was... So I don't know if I'll do a response to it, but I basically listed off, like, I went through his Spider-Man video, and the first, like, maybe 15, 20 minutes is probably the weakest part of the entire video. And then it gradually, like, he'll bring up... I don't want to say nitpicks, because they're still important to the... Like, it's as much a nitpick as you would say the dagger and TLJ going missing is a nitpick. It's still...
You're gonna make them mad if you say nitpicks. They're not gonna like that.
Well, the thing is it is a nitpick, but it's still an issue. So, for me going... I'm not trying to discredit it by going, oh, it's just a nitpick, it's irrelevant to the movie. The things that happen in the way in which that they happen would fundamentally change how the movie unfolds. However, I don't think that they are... Like, some of his criticisms were, why does this character stand in this exact position whenever Doc Ock's wife get hit by the glass? And it's like, stuff like that, I'm like, yeah, what?
That's a very strange point to bring up.
Why did the Americans build the Twin Towers exactly where they built them? It's kind of levels of stupidity where, like, I don't want to address these kind of things because they're so retarded. But he has other points where, pardon?
Doesn't he like critique one of the points being like the wife stays?
Yes.
Why doesn't she run away?
Yes!
I'm like, because her husband is there.
I was watching the video and I brought Fungus into while I was like writing my response to it. I brought Fungus in. I was like, yo, come here, listen to this. He's like, why doesn't Otto's wife run with everybody else? It's like, yes, why didn't she leave her husband to die beside a miniature fucking son?
Yeah, and then he's like, oh, how does like tiny shards of glass kill her? I'm like, dude, those are big shards of glass, and if they fucking blew her neck in...
Dude, they flew at her at sonic speed.
Yeah,
It's gonna kill her no matter what.
Oh, it's just tiny little specks of glass. I'm like, no, it's not. And the thing is, and it was like, oh well, it didn't look that gory. I'm like, yeah, because this is like a 12 film. Of course, they're not going to show her neck gaping open as she struggles to breathe for her last breaths as the blood drains out of her. Like, they're not going to show that. It's implied.
I think one of the things that he says was, what was it? How did one shard of glass going into her eye kill her? And I'm like, if only the human brain was behind the eye socket.
Yeah, that was weird as well. It was like, how does one shard of glass going into her eye kill her? It's like,
it was a fucking big shard.
It wasn't even one shard of glass. It was just like a stylistic showing one glass going towards her eye.
Yeah.
But it's clear as day that there's like tons of fragments and shards of glass going into her body.
Yeah.
And again, like, there are multiple times where he'll bring up things about. I think there was one part where Doc Ock and Spider-Man are heading towards the train. They're falling on top of it, and he's like, "Yeah." At this point, you can see that they go head first, and then you can also, in the evidence that he's showing the clip as evidence to support his claim, but the clip shows that the tentacles stop Doc Ock's head hitting the train, and I'm like,
yeah,
what you did? But on the other side of it, he'll show points where he's like, where does the bag of money go? Why doesn't he use the the daggers in the arms, the knives that he has? Why doesn't he use them more often? He'll bring up good points here and there, but some of the points that he fixates on are, I want to say, relatively minor. Like, see, this isn't a response to the Spider-Man video. I think I'll probably either we'll cover it for PF or I'll do it myself. I don't want to get too invested in it because ultimately this is a discussion about Southpaw and his behavior with the EFAP community.
Yes. And I wanted to get back to that, by the way.
Yeah, of course.
But you could just finish off your main point, Josh.
Well, yeah, my ultimate thing is his Spider-Man 2 video. It's well edited, it's well put together. He's put a lot of effort into it. I can clearly see that. And at the beginning of all this, I thought, here's a guy that's just chasing clout who's simply firing hot takes out online for the sake of it. After watching that video, I actually gained a little bit of respect for him, where I was like, okay, you've put a lot of time and effort into this, I can appreciate the craft. But on the other hand, it's not flawless video. And for you to take the position...
I don't think any of us three agree with the notion that it's a 3 out of 10. That it's on par with The Last Jedi.
Definitely not. No.
No.
Yeah, exactly.
The biggest thing for me, it was the throwing car at Peter scene, but that doesn't write the movie off in the same way. Like, you're in an exam and you have 2 or 3 questions wrong, you fail utterly. It's that kind of like.
It's an issue. Don't get me wrong, but given what happens in the movie, it doesn't make sense for that character to make that decision. Does it completely derail the movie? No. If Doc Ock had hit Peter and Peter happened to be just a normal guy, he would have died. The movie would have probably finished. But thankfully, he wasn't just a normal guy. Thankfully, he was fucking Spider-Man.
I guess this is kind of like an ad hoc, but I mean, even if Peter did die, you could say, well, Doc would be like, shit, that's one of my leads gone. I'll go look for something else, maybe.
Possibly.
I mean, you could say he's a bit callous in that kind of area.
I mean, it's an interesting topic of discussion, and I'd like to investigate it in particular more. But for now, I'd probably want to give most of the time to somebody.
Circle back.
Yeah, circle back to. What was his name? Wolf?
Wolf.
Okay.
No, Southpaw.
Discount Rags, wasn't it? Discount Rags.
I think it was B-Tech Mauler. I can't remember which.
Yeah.
You keep us right for us.
Alright, so that segment that we watched in the beginning, that was posted on Reddit, the Mauler subreddit.
Okay.
Because somebody noticed that, okay, it seems like the community and the people of EFAP, there's a lot of tension, and then they used that as an example. And obviously people didn't take it well because he's just throwing out all of these labels, not really clarifying what he means by it. Then he decided, 7 days later, by the way, 6 or 7 days later, he decided to respond to this Reddit post. And it's a giant response, right? And we can't even, there's no way we can go through the entire response. We'll go through the section that he posted on Twitter. So he said, don't normally like to air grievances publicly like this, but today I saw a couple of things that prompted me to say something. And this has been building up for a while, though. And this is where he clarifies what he means by all of these labels he threw out a month ago. So, should I read it up?
Yeah, sure.
Should I read it out loud, or should Alpha?
It's either or. What I'm gonna do is you guys will read it out, and then I'm just gonna show it on the video in post.
Yeah. Okay. So the first section, right? What I mainly take issue with is when I see accusations of woke SJW propaganda being hurled at media merely for having an LGBT romance, a diverse cast, etc. And this is where the examples come in. There's a range of examples from how some of the EFAP audience reacts to Blind Manor. So that's the first example, right?
Mm-hmm.
And what he's talking about is that, I haven't seen the show, by the way, Blind Manor, but I know that people call it woke, and they say there's forced diversity.
Okay.
So that's probably Southpaw's point of contention. But do you know who actually also called the show woke and said it had forced diversity? You know who I'm talking about?
I'm gonna guess one of the EFAP members.
Yes. So Critical Drinker, he made a video that was critical of Blind Manor, calling it forgettable, average, not as good as the EFAP audience says it is. And he also said, you know, it was woke and it had forced diversity. So in reality, Southpaw, if he's criticizing the EFAP audience for this, he might as well just come out and say, oh yeah, by the way, I also don't agree with Critical Drinker on this particular topic. I think it's kind of silly to complain about that. But instead of targeting Critical Drinker, he targets some unnamed people of the EFAP audience.
With that point in particular, I think he's trying to make quite a nuanced point. What he's trying to do is he's trying to say that, and I full-heartedly agree with him, where a lot of people do this. I've been talking to Alpha a lot about this recently, where what will happen is there will be a piece of media released, and it has either gay characters, ethnic minorities, it has whatever in it. And then people will take this like running gag that they have. Like Critical Drinker is probably the most well known for it at this point. Where
I mean, he's a regular at this point.
With this particular idea, where if there's any of these things, oh, it's woke SJW shit. When in actuality, you've written the other people into a corner, because by your standard, if you have any lesbian characters, whatever the case, well then you can't have any media representing any of these groups, which would be retarded and silly. Let's be honest. Like, there's no reason why you should exclude these groups and say anything that has these groups is woke. I don't think we've made a clear distinction between what is woke and what is representation. I feel like people have kind of got the two mixed up. Well, not even mixed up. I think a lot of people have they put the two together, and you have an amalgamation of the two, where people will say, if you have a movie that has a minority character or a lesbian character, a lot of people will see that and assume, okay, well that's woke. Because based off the media that we've seen from the likes of Critical Drinker, and to an extent some of the media we've seen from EFAP, the EFAP creators themselves, people will say, if it has a minority character in it, they'll bring that up as a point where you're trying to promote your SJW woke agenda. Which in the case of something like TLJ, is probably fairly the case, given
Fairly
the things,
applicable, yeah.
Given the things that go on behind the scenes, where you have certain noises being made from the actors and the directors, etc., etc. But because that's not always the case, because not everybody will have seen the behind the scenes people that made Blind Manor, and the chances are they probably more than likely have some connotations to some of these agendas and ideologies that people have, these like left-wing ideas.
Yeah, and to be honest, I think it's fine of Southpaw to take issue with people applying these labels to these specific shows.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think it's necessarily wrong, and I definitely don't think it's like racist or homophobic or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't even really know why he's bringing this up. And the problem is he's not clarifying, so we have to like infer what he means by this.
Yeah.
So this is why it becomes. This is the main problem with this whole post, right? is that it becomes so vague that we are forced to infer what he means.
See, my ultimate issue comes down to you kind of need to make a bit of a... You need to clearly define what these things are in order to say... So if Critical Drinker comes out and says, this movie... So, like, I think one of the recent ones was... would it be fair to use the Godzilla Kong video that he did as an example, where he was talking about the little girl? Or is it
So
Yeah.
if I can like try and see if I can separate the two here.
Yeah.
So in the Godzilla vs Kong trailer, Critical Drinker is like, oh, of course, it has to be a girl that conquers the beast, and I'm like, well, you know, that's not really. It's not exactly like highlighting like woman power. It's just like a little girl that can like chill the monster. You might want to call that a cliche or a trope, but I mean, it was King Kong originally that not started it, but this was back in the 1930s, 1920s, maybe with Kong. He was, you know, it was a woman that tamed the beast. So when you have like a little girl that tames the beast in the newer ones, it's more a homage than a fucking woman power thing.
I mean, even at that point, you could simply say it's simply a case of like just complete innocence, having a small girl and this massive monster.
Yeah.
So it's not woke, right?
No.
Whereas what Southpaw here says is there is a range of examples from how some of the EFAP audience reacted to Bly Manor. And I'm like, how did they react? I don't know how they reacted. Do I have to go away now and watch all of Bly Manor and then...
No. You don't understand, Alpha. You have to look through chat in its entirety and spot one or two examples that proves this point.
Yeah, exactly. Cherry picking. And let's say in Bly Manor, from what I gather from a quick Google, it's like a spooky haunted house series, right? But when I Googled it on Google Images, some of the first images I got was of a lesbian couple kissing. So I'm like, if the audience is saying, I don't like this because it's pushing more lesbian, LGBT things to the forefront rather than focusing on the horror, that's a legitimate criticism. So, but the thing is, obviously, like you said, we can't tell because Southpaw doesn't fucking say. We just have to infer what they say. Maybe they said, oh, I don't like these fucking fags in my show. Maybe they said that, but I don't know. I don't know what he's saying here.
And here's the thing, right? Bly Manor hasn't really been covered by EFAP. They've briefly talked about it, but the main discussion was over on Critical Drinker's channel. So I don't really think this is related to the EFAP community all that much. So I don't know.
There you go.
This is the first example he brings up, and it's extremely... it's inconsequential, essentially.
I think I would say, like, for this in particular, as much as I understand, if you're saying something like this off the cuff, you don't necessarily have all of the evidence sitting in front of you. But if you're going to make such a big claim to say that you haven't, by not explaining, right, you've made somewhat of a valid point that I can understand. The whole concept of saying that any representation is SJW or woke. I understand that claim, but you've not clearly defined what the issue is. So you're not telling me, okay, what exactly is wrong with what people are saying about this movie? I understand, I can completely appreciate that maybe you don't have that on hand, but if you're going to make a claim like that, you kind of have to have yourself backed up. You have to have the belt and braces on. Make sure that anybody that comes at you has no chance, because you made sure that I have all of my arguments set out, I've explained exactly what I mean by this. Especially considering you're quite a relatively... I mean, a lot of people respect you, and some people don't, but a lot of people in this community do respect somebody like Southpaw.
The majority of people respect Southpaw. It's really just a minority, a vocal minority who hate on him.
So he has, like, based off that, he has a responsibility to those people to explain what his claims are. And especially considering there's quite a lot of, like, if you think about a lot of the EFAP community, a lot of people that I know personally are quite impressionable. Some people will change their opinions on the flip of a hat depending on what somebody will say. So by you saying something like that, by you not clearly defining what you mean by that, not only are you not giving the people the necessary tools to investigate themselves or to make their own minds up, you're simply telling them, this is the case, and then just leaving it at that. It's never raised again, you don't go into more detail, and nothing actually gets solved by that. Because if you're actually concerned about these issues, if you're concerned about people taking any representation and trying to turn it into, oh, it's woke, it's SJW. If you're actually concerned about that, you would explain it. You would try and stop these things reoccurring. But to me, at least, it kind of comes across as you just want to be known for these hot takes where you'll antagonize a group of people, and Southpaw seems to get off on that, where he'll antagonize this group and then just leave it, just let it sit. It's like he's casting a fucking fishing rod every time he speaks.
Yeah, exactly.
and what gets
And
solved by that?
It's not clever. It's not clever. It's just that meme, isn't it? Where it's like, "Huh, duh, I'm retarded." What the fuck? Fuck off, retard! Haha, epic trolled. He thought I was a retard, but I was actually trolling him. It's like, well done. You got me.
Yeah, well,
Dude, that was just the first point. Alright, so the second point, right? Seen all the time, smallish chat would be flooded with she anytime the trans character from The Last of Us 2 was referred to with male pronouns. Now, to be honest, I mean, this is just my personal opinion, right? If you're complaining about the fact that I have to respect a fictional character's pronouns, then it's hard for me to take you seriously. Now, if I don't talk about my personal opinion, if I'm being a little bit more objective, I would say that the people who say she instead of he, referring to this trans character, I don't think they're being coy or joking around. I think they're just confused. Because sometimes it can be confusing with a trans character.
I mean, so is okay. I don't know.
Do you have anything to say, Josh?
I don't know where to start. So first of all, right, you're completely inferring a group of people's opinions by going like, if he's trying to figure out, like, if he's trying to apply some motives to them, instead of maybe asking them or trying to investigate a little bit more, trying to find out what the actual answer is, by inferring what these groups of people think, it's not really going to help the situation. I get you kind of need to do these thought experiments every now and again. I do them all the time, and Jack fucking hates me for them. But with something like this, the chances are is some people probably do hold these, like, the EFAP audience is really fucking big. The chances are is some people probably hold some of these opinions genuinely, but for a large majority of people, it'll probably be like, you know, the Borgie Boy types, where they'll just meme on
Shots
people.
fired.
Like the SKs and so forth. Well, they're literally, like SK said in whenever we spoke to him, a lot of the things that they post and do are for the memes. Like the chances are, if they're typing
It was
in,
partially for the memes, that's what he said.
Could be the case here, yeah. And I think it's taken a lot of context away from the Last of Us 2 drama, like with why they're being quote unquote stubborn and misgendering on purpose this trans character, because it's kind of like a backlash to what they did in the Last of Us 2.
it's kind of,
which was woke bullshit. We can all agree on that, surely.
I mean, it's like personally,
Okay, well, EFAP themselves said that Abby, like, they make fun of Abby constantly. And they've had, you know, they constantly mock her. They constantly make memes about her.
see.
She's not immune from it.
So I wonder where does Southpaw draw the line, and this is ultimately where a lot of our issues with Southpaw will come into. What does he define as the issues? What does he define as the racists? What does he define as the people that are transphobic? So, like, you bring up somebody like Wolf in the past, where Wolf would have said to, and I get he said that he regrets a lot of his past stuff, but he used to say, I can't remember if it was him or Muller, but he called the Asian girl from TLJ?
Fat Asian bitch.
Yeah.
Rose Tico.
So he called Rose Tico that, and
He must be a racist.
Rags has said a lot of things in the past where I'm sure if you were to ask him today, he may say that he regrets some of it, he may not. But because it's not been defined where the line is, it's not been defined that these things are wrong. Like, everybody's quite... Whenever people say they regret some of the past videos they've done, they're very, very vague about it. They don't say specifically what they did wrong or what they said that's wrong. So if you say you regretted your past video, you've not given anybody any context by which to determine what is still valuable, what's still relevant, what I should just ignore now. And for all we know, they've had those conversations behind closed doors where, like, Wolf has said to Southpaw, for example, that he regrets some of these things and he considers them to have been racist and he has repented for them. But people don't know
But
that.
Wolf also said that he regretted everything he did on YouTube.
He was quite hyperbolic at a lot of points. So especially given the state of mind that he would have been during the time that he said those statements, I don't know if we can take all of those things at complete face value. But
yeah, and if I want to ask a question to Southpaw specifically, right, I would ask him, do you want to call someone a transphobe because they use the wrong pronoun to a trans character? Is that justified to call them a transphobe then?
I mean, at that
because
point,
I don't really think it is.
We kind of get into the argument of, I don't know if it's for us to have, because I mean, it can be, it can't be at the same time. It kind of gets into a lot of political discussions, and I don't know if we want to avoid that. But if you're going down that line, you kind of come to the conclusion of, is saying the N-word, is that racist? Is it offensive? Yeah, sure, 100%. A lot of things that you can say can be offensive. That doesn't necessarily make you a racist. By this standard, we're saying that saying a word that offends somebody makes you racist. So what happens if I make a joke, or if I say something, and I don't intend to be offensive, and I cause offense? Does that then make me a racist? You have a lot of these arguments that are broken down and broken down. You have to do a lot of thought experiments, and you have to be very, very, at the very least, you have to be very sure of what you think on a lot of these topics, and I'm not entirely sure that Southpaw is. I feel like...
No, I don't think he is.
Because these are very, very important questions that you need to get into, where they don't only... Considering the fact that a lot of the EFAP audience is so impressionable, you're kind of, to an extent, preparing a lot of these kids, because a lot of the audience is relatively young. I'd assume probably the average age is maybe between 15 to 19, I'd assume. And you're preparing a lot of these kids to go out into the real world, to go into school, and probably a lot of them just want to shitpost a meme. You find that a lot with, the EFAP Discord is... it's something, you know? And you have a lot of people
that... clearly better.
Yeah, sure, definitely. But a lot of people just want to have a good time. They want to shitpost, they want to make jokes, they want to be accepted. And whenever you have people like Mauler and Rags, Wolf, even people like Southpaw, who'll make these kind of edgy jokes, this edgy humor, because Mauler, Rags, and Wolf know that they're doing it as edgy humor, whenever these other people replicate it, and maybe they're not quite as funny, or maybe they are, but you just don't know, because with typing messages, you lose the context, you lose the tone. If I send you a message, Fries, you don't know what tone I'm speaking in. For all you know, I could be dead serious, I could be really pissed off at you. I might be taking the piss, I might be being a sarcastic cunt like I normally am.
I mean, to be fair, Josh, I never know with you, sometimes.
Exactly. And whenever you throw that into the mix, simply looking at those messages on face value in some of the EFAP chats, I could understand maybe how you would assume some of those things are racist or transphobic. But there also needs to be an element of using the context to determine whether it actually is. So if you go into the EFAP Discord and you had these genuine conversations with people, you would probably have the odd shitposter. You would possibly have the odd racist or the odd person that is actually unironically transphobic or whatever the case. But I'm sure it's in the minority. A very, very small minority. And on top of that...
I've looked through it, and I can't find any examples of people being transphobic on the EFAP Discord. I can't even find any examples of people using the word tranny. There's barely any.
Southpaw not use that word at one point?
Yes, we'll get to that later.
Oh, Christ.
Even if there was, cry about it. You know what I mean? Cry about it. It's like, people are allowed to say and think how they think. And maybe you can have a discourse with them, and you can try and change their mind and have a back and forth. But this starts to slide into that cancel culture type territory, where you just write people off as a racist and a sexist, and then you just you not slander them, but you tar them with that reputation, and then suddenly, next thing you know, they're not allowed to speak their mind or anything like that, and I hate that.
This is why it's so important.
It's a slippery slope.
Yeah.
And it's based on way too little.
It's
literally based on using the wrong pronoun.
Well, this is why it's so important. As somebody that is a part of the EFAP community, as somebody that's part of the commentary community even, you have, considering your standing in the community, you have a responsibility that if you see somebody being racist or homophobic or transphobic, whatever, you have a responsibility then to the audience, to the other people, a part of your community, to try and, at the very least, have a discussion. Or bring that up to other people that will have that discussion for you if you don't want to or you're not able to. If you really care, that's what you would do. You would report it to the mods, you would try and educate this person possibly, you would try and talk to them about it. You wouldn't go on a video and try and like tar a group of people with that brush. Even by you saying, even whenever you specify, I only mean a small part of this community, you don't specify what parts of the community, you don't specify what you mean by racist or transphobic, because those definitions by themselves constantly change. Are we to assume that...
Just give me some screenshots. That's what we need.
And it's... because he doesn't define these things, it becomes so difficult to have these discourses where we're already on the back foot whenever we're trying to understand what the fuck he means, because he doesn't explain it well enough. And he's doing a disservice to his own community by, if you genuinely care, you explain it to your community. You have that, you at the very least, if you're going to make a comment on it, at the very least, understand it enough or have the evidence to be able to have a discourse about it, or make sure that you're about to get that fucking evidence, because people are going to come after you pretty fucking soon. And he's failed to do that, and the evidence that he does bring up has more often than not has ended up being contrary to something else he's either previously accepted or other people that he says, like...
Oh yeah.
And it doesn't even apply to Southpaw. Like, I don't know if you want to get into it too much, Fries, but with, like, the anomaly situation, with, like, how Mauler reacted, where Southpaw leaked the DMs and Mauler didn't really do much. He didn't really say much. He just tried to stay out of it. And I understand, you have two of your friends that are going at it online. You don't really want to get too involved, because you probably... it's damage limitation at that point.
It's not really your business, that's the thing.
But the moment that guy starts bringing it up on your podcast, then you kind of, either you make a point of saying, I don't want to discuss it, or you discuss it fairly. He let that discussion unfold on his podcast a few times, and one of the things that Mauler said was, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, Fries, he said that he wasn't happy with Anomaly leaking, or with, what was it? Was it in the past, was it? Where he said that he wasn't happy with somebody leaking DMs? Mauler in particular.
Alright, so the thing you're talking about, right, is that back in May of 2020, I think, Glib leaked some DMs from Mauler. They were completely... I mean, there was no, like... It wasn't like Glib was trying to expose Mauler. It was literally just him leaking DMs from Mauler explaining a certain thing.
Yeah.
And Mauler came in and said, okay, not cool to leak DMs. You could have proved your point without doing that. And that sort of applies to Southpaw.
Yeah.
Because he didn't really have... I mean, I know this is a touchy subject, right? And Southpaw had no real reason to leak the DM of Anomaly saying, eat a PL bullet to in regards to Wolf, other than just as a gotcha. Because there wasn't even, like, the point of their discussion they were having on Twitter.
It wasn't
relevant. You know why? It's because Southpaw was losing the argument. Because right before, he took a screenshot of Anomaly saying, "Oh, you're just a hater," to some guy on Twitter, and he used that as an example of Anomaly being autistically angry for no reason. And that guy on Twitter turned out to be Anomaly's friend, and Southpaw didn't realize. So, understandably, Anomaly was annoyed by that. And that's why he wrote, "I'm so done with you, drop dead loser. Like, why are you trying to cancel me on Twitter over this?" But yeah,
he's not talking relevant. He's not having the discussion at hand. He's just going into the DMs, into his Twitter history and being like, "Oh, well, what about this?" And it's so shitty, dude.
It's definitely...
I mean, I'm very principled in general, and I think leaking DMs, is usually a bad thing. I mean, it has to be justified, right? If you're leaking DMs, it has to be because you're proving that the person you're leaking DMs from is, a rapist or potentially a threat.
I mean, so it's kind of it's murky waters, because I feel like you can have an argument on, do you leak DMs if I say somebody said this? Yeah, I'm having an argument online and I say somebody said this, and it's relevant to the discussion, and they go, I never said that. I'm like, well, I can prove that you said that. It's like, no, you don't have that proof. Show that proof. And then you show the proof. Or with something like, there was a situation earlier in the year where somebody was recording some guy admitting to being a pedophile. And things like that, where I'm like, yeah. And if you're doing it with the intention of, it is murky waters, because in that instance, I'm like, okay, well, if you're going to expose somebody for something that is a fucking crime, and you report that to the police, I'm more than happy for you to do that. But then the moment you decide to post that on Twitter and not report it to the police, I'm kind of concerned on what your moral compass is. Do you really care about justice, or do you just want to have
Josh, it's for the memes, okay? It's for the memes.
But this is where it's very important, where Southpaw is like an acolyte who leads this new group of EFAP supporters, and the whole, like, the cancel culture, the leaking DMs, the constant, like, taking things kind of out of context sometimes, because, like, that message that he leaked from Anomaly, it didn't have the context of what happened with Anomaly and Wolf, didn't have the context of what happened with Anomaly, Wolf, and Southpaw. You don't know what the fuck went on. For all we know, Southpaw could have said that and worse to Anomaly, or he might have been really nice. We don't know. We don't have the context. And by leaking something that is not only irrelevant, but completely fucking contextless, what have you added to the conversation? If you honestly cared about the conversation you were having, then you would have it. You wouldn't try and, like, as Alpha was saying before about this cancel culture that somebody like Southpaw is kind of feeding into a bit, he's destroying the commentary community.
Listen, Southpaw wanted to cancel Anomaly because Anomaly said that the Spider-Man 2 video he did, it was kind of shit. He said that privately to SK. That's why this whole discussion on Twitter started.
And again, so, even then, right? Even if that's the case, he's entitled to his fucking opinion. If he wants to justify it, or if he doesn't want to justify it, that's completely up to him. If he says he doesn't like it,
there's no reason for SK to leak the DM of Anomaly saying that. Like, why leak that to Twitter? Why do you want to make this public drama? I mean, I would say this to SK's face, that is a cut move.
I mean, because drama sells, I guess. Because, like, somebody like Southpaw, whether he wants to admit it or not, is gonna benefit from these, like, Twitter spats. Somebody like SK boosts his own notoriety by getting involved in these, like, arguments. Do you think that Southpaw's Spider-Man video would have got anywhere near the amount of views had he not had these Twitter spats? Had he not had the times where he calls out the chat on the EFAP episodes? Of course not. It would have half the views, if not less.
Well, also because he constantly promoted it through EFAP. And he talked about how it was, it was given the thumbs up by Mauler and all of these other people from the EFAP community. It
was given Jesus Christ himself has stamped this. This is a certified good product. It does remind me of this, like, it's kind of like a biblical mentality where people are like breaking off into these smaller groups. Like, you have these different sects of the EFAP Discord where you have, like, the original purists who follow all of Mauler, aka Jesus' words to the book, follow all of his beatitudes, and you have some of the other people that are like, oh, I don't know, I prefer the old EFAP, I prefer the Decalogue, and then you have some of the new boys that are like, oh, I feel like this Mauler boy, he's getting a bit out of touch. Somebody like Southpaw, maybe he can take us into a new direction. He can lead us out of Egypt. It's kind of...
He's the Messiah, after all.
It's like Mauler's kind of... It's like Jesus dies, and then it's like between Peter and Paul. It's like, oh, who do you stay with? Do you go over with Southpaw as acolytes, or do you want to stay here?
It's very tribalistic indeed.
100%. And who does that benefit then? Because if you're concerned about having the conversation, then fucking have it. Twitter spats, Twitter drama, I get it sells, okay? If you're a smaller content creator, that's going to be beneficial for you. It's going to benefit you to get involved in these dramas, but who does it help in the long run? Like, realistically, if you honestly care about the subject matter at hand, it's going to benefit your podcast or your YouTube channel or your YouTube video. It's going to get you more clicks. But, like, speaking from a principled position, you kind of compromise your own principles in order to get that notoriety, that fame. You don't really earn the success in that sense. You just get involved in a bunch of like drama.
A bunch of snarky, discussions.
It
Because
reminds
Twitter is
me.
nothing but snark.
It reminds me of those fucking, those magazines that you get where Katie Price has married a new guy to keep herself relevant in a new magazine. It's like, oh, like, it's desperate, it's sad, I appreciate, right? Give Southpaw's dues. Based off that Spider-Man video alone, he has some talent, okay? He is talented at editing, he was pretty good at the editing, some of the clips were a little bit loud in places, but for the most part, it was a pretty well-constructed video, had a pretty obvious start, beginning, end. There were weak parts to it, obviously, there were issues with it, but it definitely took a lot of time and effort, and it's not a perfect video. I don't know if I would even say it's necessarily a very good video, but I appreciate the craft, and he put a lot of time and effort into it. So he's clearly not a
the
completely
video was
talented.
decent.
He's not a completely talentless guy. I don't think he necessarily needs to get involved in these Twitter spats. But
Well, this definitely makes it worse for himself. The fact that he is having this posts. All right, so should we go on with the third point?
Yes, I would like to go over this.
Yes.
the best
All
point.
right, so the third point, right? Some of my own Twitter followers saying things like, "I refuse to acknowledge Into the Spider-Verse because it has a character who was created solely so there could be a black Spider-Man." Yes, this was said unironically. And I just want to bring up, right? This post is from February 10th or 11th.
Uh-huh.
This tweet he's referring to is a quote tweet back from October. So it's not like he's not exactly using like a
Modern
relevant
day
example.
examples, yeah.
Dude, I mean, he's trying to prove that this is a rampant issue, these racists. And then he uses a 5-month-old example.
That's
And
the brilliance of
I
cherry
couldn't even-
picking.
I couldn't even find the quote tweet. I think it's been deleted.
But that's the brilliance of cherry picking, where you could go as far back as you fucking want, get the evidence you need, bring it to the president, and go, see? Look at all my citations. It's like, okay, let's look behind the details. Let's see, when were these posted? Who were they posted by? You're saying this was said unironically? Do you definitely know that? Even if somebody says, I said that unironically, how do you not know that that person is shitposting? How do you not know they're taking the piss? You don't. It's somebody said beside a fucking...
and since I couldn't find the tweet, I don't know either. I don't know if it's a joke or not.
Yeah.
And here's the thing, right? Some of my own Twitter followers saying bad things, they're your Twitter followers. They don't... Just because they follow you, that doesn't mean you endorse them. Fucking idiot.
What's it got to do with EFAP? Thing is, as well, with the was created solely so there could be a black Spider-Man in brackets. Yes, this was said unironically. I mean, yeah, Miles Morales was a token black Spider-Man. He turned out to be a good character because of good writers and stuff. But I would recommend. There's a guy called Young Ripper on YouTube, and he goes over this tokenism in comics and stuff, and how creatively bankrupt it is when a character is going, not selling well, or they want to do something vitally new. What they'll do is they'll kill them off, or like take away their powers somehow, and then transfer those powers into a black character or a female character, or yada yada yada. Insert approved characteristic here, yeah, woke approved characteristic here. It's not wrong. What you want to do is say, dude, you shouldn't write off Into the Spider-Verse because of it, because of the black tokenism. It's actually quite a good movie. But how is this an example of like alt-right racist, evil, misogynist Nazis in EFAP? How, like, it's not.
It's clearly not.
I don't know if he's
someone
like...
going,
And to be honest, right, I think there's a bit more nuance behind this.
Yeah.
And I think there could be a discussion to this. Instead of just labeling this guy as a racist and moving on.
exactly. That's what I'm trying to say. Is like this guy was like saying, I don't really want to watch. I don't like Into the Spider-Verse because it has a character who was originally brought in as tokenism. You could have a conversation with them, but then obviously he's just going to be a smug, arrogant prick about it and say, yes, this was said unironically. I can't believe this person said it unironically. Wow.
Whoever this person is, I cannot believe it.
Yeah, you said that unironically. So again, it's like coming with this snarky, sarcastic, dismissive approach, and I hate it. Address the argument.
One of the biggest issues I would have then is, aside from him not actually explaining why somebody's wrong, which I don't find that he does that very often. And if he does do it, I don't think he does it terribly well. But one of the things that definitely resonated with me was, he said a while back about, so like Wolf in particular, he brought up Wolf's mental health, and how saying something to Wolf is, like, especially given the situation that he was in, some things could have tipped him over the edge. And I completely respect that, and I appreciate that that is something that a lot of people have to be mindful of. Like, you look at somebody in the past, like, the whole Caroline Flack situation that happened in the UK was that 2 years ago, a year ago? Where there was a woman who allegedly, she was the presenter of Love Island, and she allegedly hit her boyfriend, and she was going to go through a trial to determine whether or not she was guilty of the crime. And she was fucking reeled on social media, to the point where she actually ended up, like, she lost her job, she lost a lot of her opportunities, I think she lost her house as well, and then she ended up killing herself. And obviously that's to a scale that will probably not be seen for a while. But the point still stands where if you honestly care about somebody, or if you care about something that somebody's done wrong, why do you want to turn something into a Twitter spat? Because is that going to be beneficial for the other person's mental health? And by no means am I saying don't discuss it, because there's ways that you can do it. You don't have to call somebody out on Twitter for a shitty point, or you can do that, but you have to be very careful about the manner in which you do it. You don't just go, stupid point, I'm going to call this guy out for the memes. Why would you do that? Who does that benefit? Do you solve anything at all from that? No. Discuss the problems. Discuss it ironically, have discussions around it, try and see from the other angle as well. Don't assume that you're definitely right, but have a conversation about it. Try and get, like, the context that you don't have. Try and address some more elements that you're maybe not quite as au fait on, or maybe use it as an example of which, okay, we're gonna use this as drawing a line in the sand, we're not gonna do stuff like this or say stuff like this in the future. But by the way that Southpaw covers these people, Anomaly being a key one, some of the other people that you'll have covered in the past, a lot of the people that follow Southpaw will hop on that and then constantly berate this guy behind the scenes, and Southpaw doesn't help these people by bringing them up and up and up again. Where
No.
if you really want to do it once and let it be. But you don't stop. You keep going. You have your pound of flesh, and then you decide to take some blood with it as well. You keep going and going and going, and there's no need, no necessity to it. You don't get anything out of it at the end of the day. Neither does the other person. Fuck. Think of the impact that some of the things that he'll have said will have had on these people who, let's be honest, if you're following EFAP or Discord, you probably don't have a massive media following, right? You're probably like us. You're probably nobodies who watch the show, really enjoy the show, but don't get a lot of interaction online. And then you'll say something which may not be right, which may have been said in the heat of a moment, which may have been said as a joke, whatever. And then that's posted on social media, potentially without context, potentially with. And then all of these people come after you and berate you day after day, and they don't fucking stop. That's not good for your mental health, is it?
No.
It's like, a lot of the time he just replies to these people like, who have one follower, not many followers, and he has 2,400. And then every time, what he gains is that 50, well, let's say 10 people, 10 followers, which is likely, will then jump on this bandwagon and then start replying. And then you've got to go on Twitter and try, which has a terrible interface, by the way, and then try and
God, I fucking hate it.
Answer 10 different arguments from 10 different people. And it just becomes exhausting.
Yeah.
Because you've got 10 autists who will not give up, who will never give up the point, even if they are wrong.
Did you not see, there was a guy, I think Meme posted something about it in one of our chats, where there was this guy who was getting message after, I think he had 20 messages from Borgie Boy?
Exactly.
Spidey panels.
You have
talking
those
about Spidey
guys.
panels.
Yeah, you have those those Borgie type people who will just like bother you for weeks on end about a fucking argument you had like 7 weeks ago, and it's just like, fuck.
And I can understand again.
Okay, I get that you want to call out arguments, right? But
There's
the
a
way
line.
you're doing it makes you look psychotic.
Yeah,
okay.
there is a line where you go, we've covered the argument, I'm not getting any further, I'm just gonna leave it be. You may post a joke or a meme every now and again, but you don't message this guy 20 separate times. That's a joke. Like, it's kind of, there are levels to it where you kind of need to have an element of self-awareness about you, where you go, okay, we've had our fun, we're not getting anywhere, this guy, for all you know, this guy could have mental health issues already, could have potentially learning difficulties. If you find those things out in retrospect, that's going to make you look like a terrible person. But something else that you should also acknowledge is that doesn't protect that person from having bad points. If you have a bad point, you call that person out for their bad point, and then you're done. That's it, it's finished.
Yeah.
You don't have to continue reeling on this guy, constantly messaging them day after day after day, hour after hour. It gets a point where it's insanity. It's scary.
Yeah. Well, there's an example of Southpaw doing the same thing, right? Because he was having a discussion on Twitter with this guy called Anonymous Egg.
Mhm.
And Anonymous Egg said that he made like an argument about Spider-Man 2 about, maybe Doc Ock used cameras to keep an eye on Spider-Man. And Southpaw thought this was hilarious, right?
Yeah.
So he ended up making a total, and I counted, a total of 31 tweets in 24 hours railing on this
Jesus.
guy. And one of the tweets, I mean, I'm sure I can find it because I pretty much have everything from him screenshot. But one of the tweets ended with, I just want to say, right, you've lost every shred of your credibility.
Because someone did like a bit of a shitty ad hoc argument. Oh god.
Oh my lord.
Burn the heretic, am I right, guys?
Well, it was just a dumb argument. That was the thing.
But of all the
It was
things
a
to focus
meme-worthy
on,
argument.
why would you focus on that one thing? So that one thing does not necessarily discredit every single thing he says. You've had one bad point. Okay, that's one bad point. Let's not judge a book by its cover. Look at the rest of it as well. What else does he say? Is he shit consistently across the board? Or is he just spitballing potential ideas where he's going, I don't know, maybe this is a possibility? Again, because Twitter is this like sphere completely without context, where you can just clip somebody's message up or clip somebody out of context and go, this person said this, and you have no context at all, and then you're expected to have an opinion on it. Well, that's just a fucking... You have a calamity in your hands there. You're gifted, like, to all of your audience especially, they're going to assume they have the context that they need, and then they're going to go after this guy. And you've set this person... A lot of the people that Southpaw will cover, you've said yourself, they'll have like, what, 2, 3, 5, maybe on a good day, 10 followers? Really? Do you need to
And a lot of the
punch down this
screenshots he
much?
takes of YouTube comments, a lot of the screenshots Southpaw takes of YouTube comments, they have, for the most part, they only have 1 or 2 likes.
If even
So it's
that.
literally looking for bottom of the barrel criticisms about you and then responding to them.
Well, yeah,
because,
like
I don't
you
know, I guess he has an inferiority complex or something.
did you not
I
say
guess
that?
he's obsessed about reading comments about himself.
Did you not say that you thought that he was like Control F to find his like name in places?
That's absolutely what he does, because I've looked through the YouTube comment section on every single EFAP video that stars Southpaw. Southpaw responds to 75 to 80% of all the comments made about him in every single EFAP video. It's insane. It's not that it's a giant issue, right? I just think it's a bit pointless to spend so much time of your day to dunk on
Yeah.
comments that don't even have any support.
They're clearly
Like, why even bother? Why bother get mad about a guy's calling you discount wolf?
and it's clearly not indicative. If it was like comments that had 20, 30, 100 likes, well, those
See,
comments
here's the
are
thing,
indicative
Josh,
of the
you just
community.
reminded me.
What's
You
up?
just reminded me, right? Southpaw pretty much only takes screenshots of comments with 0 to no likes. Pretty much no likes, right?
Uh-huh.
He almost never screenshots critical comments about him that has more than 10 likes. So all of the good criticisms, he never screenshots those.
I mean, maybe like there is a possibility that he may cover them or he may take those things to heart a little bit more. And I mean, from the sense of if I'm Southpaw and I see a comment that is genuinely critiquing me, trying to get into Southpaw's head, I probably wouldn't post that on Twitter because that maybe discredits me. So maybe, let's say for the sake of the argument, he'll take those opinions on board and he'll go, okay, well, I'll need to improve myself in these ways. But you wouldn't necessarily want to tweet about those things. I mean, at the same time, would you really want to tweet about the people who have 1 or 2 likes? It's so petty and petulant.
It's like
it really gets under his skin. That's the problem.
He needs the reason he shares these shitty ones is because he needs like an audience to just like kiss ass him, brown nose him. And
he needs constant validation.
Validation, that's the word. Yeah, he needs constant validation. He's a very insecure person, from what I've seen, from how often, how much he will just like reply to every single shitty comment.
I don't know if that's the case, but I definitely get that impression from him.
That's the impression he's getting, yeah.
Yeah.
With the research I've done on Southpaw, now I sound like a scientist. With the research I've done, right?
Tip your glasses as you said that.
Tip my fucking Reddit gold. With the research I've done, right, on Southpaw, I'm very confident in calling him insecure. That's my takeaway from this. The way he responds to comments about himself. Alright, so point number 4, right? That can largely be skipped because he says, trying to argue that a certain actor on a certain shitty NBC show wasn't ejected from his gig due to racial discrimination when really all signs pointed to exactly that. The reason this can be skipped is I have no fucking idea what he's talking about. Because I looked through people talking about NBC shows on EFAP, nothing came up. I even looked through people talking about actors being fired for racial discrimination, nothing came up. Pretty much the only thing that came up on the internet when I searched for this was America's Got Talent. There's no fucking way Southpaw was talking about America's Got Talent. I don't believe it.
I mean,
this is why he has to specify what the fuck he's talking about.
So again, like, could he be referring to the whole like the Mandalorian stuff that went down? Possibly. Maybe
that's not an NBC show.
Yeah, but is he maybe using it as an analogy? Possibly. I don't know.
Yeah, this is why you have to specify. Also, when you say that this person was fired for racial discrimination, that's a massive fucking claim, right? It's probably a bit more nuanced than that. It's very silly.
And again, like somebody said, racial discrimination. We've already established multiple people have very different ideas and definitions of what racism is. So in the UK, if you were to say a particular word, if you were to say the N-word, and you were deemed in a court of law that saying that thing, or even with the Count Dankula situation where he made his pug do a Nazi salute, because that was offensive, and because that was deemed as being racist based off the definition it was offensive, we've got a very different definition to a lot of other people on what racism is. We've defined it off the action and the offense caused as opposed to the intention of the action. So it's kind of like, whenever I've been doing law, we'll cover a lot of things where you'll look at so like you'll have a strict liability charge where it's a case, I'll bring this up all the time, Jack's probably gonna, if he watches this, cry, but a strict liability case will be if you do a thing, that's always a crime, regardless of the context, regardless of your intention. Whereas something like murder, the context will definitely change how that crime's interpreted. So if I accidentally run over somebody in my car, well, that's not necessarily murder, it's probably more likely manslaughter because it was an accident. I may have been irresponsible whenever I was driving and caused the death, but ultimately I didn't intend to do it. So something like racism, do you judge it off the intention? Like, do you have to be intentionally racist? Or is it based off, is it a strict liability charge where you're always, if you say this and somebody's offended, are you always racist? And again, we have incredibly conflicting terms from country to country, let alone from continent to continent. He lives on the other side of the fucking world. And they probably have a very different definition to us of what racism is, of like So again, by using a case like this, by these like they're kind of, I almost want to say disambiguous terms, because how do you really know, assuming that we understood what he was talking about? Fry says he can't find the context for what he was referencing, but even if we had context, that show's definition of racism isn't necessarily the definition, which is why it's so fucking important to have the context.
If Southpaw is watching this, right, I just want to say, if you actually were talking about America's Got Talent, I mean, there's no way you were, but if you actually were, that's an example from June. That's 7 months ago.
I mean,
so again, not exactly relevant.
I get if he wants to bring up a point, he's struggling to find relevant examples. Bringing up something from that long ago, maybe, like in the grand scheme of things, it's kind of relevant, maybe not, but if he wants to make a point, and that's the only reference he can find, fair enough.
I mean, I wouldn't say fair enough, because it's so old. He's trying to prove that this is a rampant issue today, so he shouldn't go back 7 months. If it actually is America's Got Talent.
Fair.
It's not. Alright, so let's skip to the next point.
Go ahead.
The final point, right, of this section. And oh boy, I haven't even gotten to how some people in the community have handled Jay's ongoing transition. Why don't you take a gander at where the upvotes and downvotes are going in this post from a guy who got blocked by Jay after unironically referring to trans people as trannies? So he's referring to a Reddit post, right? This guy made a Reddit post on the Mauler subreddit, and I'll post it in the chat after I'm done talking about it. It's a post from the Mauler subreddit where he said, "Oh, I got blocked by Jay," and then people ask him, "Oh, why did you get blocked by Jay?" And he said, "Oh, I got blocked because he disagreed with my opinions on bisexuality, transsexuality, whatever. The real reason as to why I got blocked is because he said the tranny word to Jay over a tweet, which Jay doesn't like, and that's why I got blocked." Again, this is very minor drama. It's some guy who said the word tranny to Jay. He didn't even call him a tranny. He just said tranny should not be in women's sports. That's the point of contention, right?
I mean, at that point,
so what Southpaw's complaining about is
the use of the word,
fans being transphobic and fans using the word tranny.
That seems to be the reference, the point of reference he's given for this is what I consider to be transphobia then.
Yeah, and it's ironic because, you know, I found an example of him having a discussion with a transsexual person on Twitter from October, so, you know, if he wants to go back that far, I can go back that far. He had a discussion with this transsexual, right?
Yeah.
And he ended the discussion with calling her mentally disabled, and then on Discord, he wrote, "Jesus Christ, this tranny is a fucking idiot." I'm paraphrasing, but that was essentially what he said. So he said the tranny word himself. And we'll put a pin in that because we'll come back to it later when we cover the discussion I had with him on Twitter. But yeah.
Yeah, it just shows a massive case of the Overton window shifting pretty far left. If tranny should not be in sports is like this right-wing ultra-nationalist claim. Like, I mean, the contention of the word tranny itself is just silly to me. It's like there's a comedian who says this. It's like you have your grandmother, granny. You have,
oh, no.
You know, we just shorten things and add a Y to it. You have transsexual, tranny. Like, I don't know if that's your two views. I'm not speaking for you two, but like, I just think it's just something that like is done.
So I think some people see it as like a derogatory term. Whether or not it is, I don't know enough about the situation. Like I don't know enough about transgenders and so forth to determine whether or not that is an offensive term. It may be, it may not be. But I think it may be a bit of a similar situation to the argument of, is saying the N-word does that make you racist? Is saying is shortening transgender to the alternative, does that make you transphobic? And again, like, these are discussions that you kind of need to have, because you need to have those lines drawn in the sand in order for you to determine what is racist, what is transphobic. I get that, but by Southpaw then seemingly coming out and criticizing somebody else for using a word that he's used in the past, either he's consistent with it and he says that he's also transphobic, or the other angle is, oh no, he regrets saying that, or he said it as a joke, so it's okay. Or the argument that I seen him use, which I absolutely loved, was, oh yeah, my dad died of cancer, so I can make cancer jokes. It's kind of like,
standard.
like what? My friend's transgender. I can make transgender jokes now. Like what? But
my friend's black. I've got the N-word pass.
Like, it's
Oh, yeah.
levels of stupidity where you've set a terrible fucking precedent, my friend. Like, what do we do now? I don't even know what to say to that. It's just so fucking retarded and silly. And yes, he may regret it now. He may say that, oh, I was wrong to say that in the past. You've not told anybody that. I've not seen anything of you coming out and saying that this is wrong, and if I've said it in the past, I apologize for it. You've not apologized for anything. If you think that is genuinely transphobic, well, then that makes you transphobic. Or alternatively,
And honestly, the problem with Southpaw here is he's not really focusing on the real issue, because the issue here is this guy lied about something, so Southpaw can call that out. The fact that he used the word tranny, like that's not really important to the discussion. I mean, that can be, you can deem that as offensive, but we'll find out later on why that is hypocritical. Because I got an example of that.
The thing is now, because he's not done that, and you guys have called him out on there, it just comes across as extremely disingenuous if he does, just to like prove himself right.
Yeah.
I kind of, to an extent, I feel like he's backed into a corner on this one where no matter what he says, he's kind of screwed in a sense where if I apologize for what I said in the past, I'm only apologizing because I was caught out. It's like, I mean, at that point, I don't know what else he's expected to do. Like, I don't know what else we really want from him. It's a confusing one where I think ultimately what I would like the most is for him to just change the standard where I don't know if that is what, like, if that's what you consider to be transphobic, does that make a lot of the mods in the EFAP server transphobic? Does that make people higher up in the EFAP community that views that word transphobic as well? I'm concerned at what angle you're coming at it from. I'm concerned at what the ramifications for what your statement is for everybody else.
A lot of people on the EFAP Discord use the tranny word because it's allowed. So obviously, even some of the mods use it. So are those mods at fault too? Everyone who uses the tranny word, are everyone transphobic?
Is the entire, because that's allowed in the Discord, does that make the Discord transphobic?
I guess it does.
Like this lack of my ultimate point is, at the very least, Southpaw should be consistent with what he's saying. If this means that this particular individual is transphobic for saying that word, then everybody else that says it is also transphobic. If Mahler says that it's wrong for you to leak DMs or it's unnecessary, when Southpaw does that, it's also unnecessary and unfair. Be consistent across the board. If you have something else you can add to it, if you have like another angle that you want to come at things from,
and here's the thing, right? Because he mentions that people haven't taken Jay's transition very well, and then he uses this Reddit thread as an example, and the people in this Reddit thread, they said, some of them said, I don't really like Jay that much anymore because of these reasons. None of those reasons included being a tranny or transsexual. So it's not even transphobic. He just has an issue with people not liking Jay. And that's where it becomes kind of ridiculous.
Like, at one point then, it's like, what was it? I think it's like 21 Jump Street, they make that joke where it's like, I think the guy punches somebody, and he's like, oh, why'd you punch him? And he's like, oh, you were doing your gay ass homework. He's like, you punched me because I'm gay? It's like, what? No, that's not the case at all.
Yeah, you're assuming intentions way too much. That's the problem.
Yeah, because you're retrospectively then going, okay, so people don't like this guy, and he's currently going through a transition. So people don't like Jay. This personally, I'm not entirely sure what pronouns I'm supposed to use. Please, by all means,
I don't
tell
think
me.
he is, to be honest.
If you let's just say Jay, right? If you want to use Jay's pronouns incorrectly, I mean, I get it. Probably annoys Jay.
It's a slight annoyance at most. And anything beyond that would be, blowing the issue out of proportion.
It is an interesting one there, because at what point then, you could have the argument that by people not using those pronouns, Jay necessarily needs those things, but by not having the acceptance necessarily, it's kind of it's probably more difficult, I'd assume.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Alright, so should we go towards the final segment, or do you have anything more to say about this?
Well, I kind of want to stick on this for just a second or two, where I feel like it is a very interesting subject of I definitely feel like in this instance, if you say that you don't like somebody, and that person just so happens to be going through a transition, or that person just so happens to be black or gay or transsexual or whatever, if your point is contained within itself, and you've said that I don't like your point, or I don't like characteristics of yours, or I don't like things that you've said, and you don't mention the race or the gender or whatever, then those things shouldn't be brought up at all, because they're completely irrelevant. Unless the person brings those up against you, you can't bring those things up as a defense. If I was a black woman and somebody said that they didn't value my opinion, I can't then turn around and go, okay, you don't value my opinion because I'm a black woman, unless they specifically clarify that that is the case. If they say genuine reasons why they don't like me as a person, why they don't like things that I've said, then those are the things that I need to respond to. But unless my sexuality, gender, whatever is brought up, I can't bring that up as a defense because it's completely irrelevant. You know, and I feel like it's quite disingenuous to do so. It's quite a lot of people get into the habit of trying to use these things as kind of like outs. Some people do, not everybody, by no means, but I feel like a lot of people use them as like I'm a part of this group, you can't touch me, and I hate that, because then at that point you make people untouchable. You say that I can't have a conversation with you because I'm not a part of your exclusive group. I'm not a part of it's inherently discriminatory, where you can't have an opinion unless you're a part of this group of people.
Yeah, we don't want to give certain groups special treatment because of some arbitrary factor.
Yeah,
and I guess that's a political opinion, but that's what I stand behind.
I mean, that kind of goes both ways. Like, if you don't want to discriminate in favor of somebody because they're white, don't do it because they're not white. You kind of, this whole... And again, these things may be wrong. I'm more than happy to have a discussion about it, but my main interest would be, if you're constantly consistent, then you're generally going to be consistently fair. And that's what if you're part of the community that Southpaw is a part of, your main interest should be the integrity of the things that you say, which an inherent part of that is being consistent. And if you're constantly consistent with the things that you say, you're gonna continue to keep your integrity. At some points, maybe you'll have to change if you say something that's wrong or silly or retarded or whatever. But for the most part, at the very least, you'll have your integrity, and on top of that, you're going to be consistently, hopefully fair, assuming your principles are relatively sound in the first place. But it seems like a very strange thing to me for him to pick up on, definitely.
Yeah. I mean, okay, we can't really cover, this is a discussion in and of itself. This could be a whole video.
Fucking hell,
so we could have a discussion about this eventually. Not for PAVE, but...
It's getting scarily political.
Oh god. PAVE cannot become political.
No. It's supposed to be an escape from politics.
Yeah. Well, maybe it can be done for that, political podcast you wanted to do. That's
don't know what you're
definitely
talking
gonna
about.
happen.
I don't know what you're
Josh?
talking about. You know me, since when do ideas or plans fall through with me, huh? Name one.
I can neither confirm nor deny its existence. I have nothing to do with it or everything to do with it.
See, this man gets a new mic and thinks he can shit talk me now.
Alright, so this is the final point, right? And this got its own section. This is really why I wanted to respond to this, because this is easily the most, to be fair, this is the most insane part of the post.
Okay.
So he says, then of course, there's the experiences that BuzzX, that's Southpaw's friend, has shared with me that have pushed him away from participating in Muller's Discord, which is sad to think about, not only because it would just suck to go through that sort of thing firsthand, but also because that's where I met him in the first place. Now, I can't say for certain what percentage of the community displays this type of I can't fucking speak! Community displays this type of toxicity. Maybe it's less than 5% of it, maybe it's more. Let's say it's less than 5% of it. Even if it's that low of a percentage, that 5% is akin to a type of cancer, for lack of a better word. So, to put it into
5%.
perspective, how many people have missed out on the opportunity to befriend such a wonderful guy like BuzzX because he had enough experiences with racist bullshit from the community that he had to quit it?
Okay, so
So
5%. Let's say 5%. Okay, 5% of the EFAP community would be roughly, probably what, 5,000 people if they get like.
I think there are around like 4,000 people on the EFAP Discord.
Okay, so
Okay, well, he's not saying it's 5%. He's
yeah,
saying, well, maybe it's 5%, maybe it's more. So he can't even clarify how many people in total this is.
which he doesn't
100,000
necessarily.
views per
Again,
video?
as I said before, he doesn't have to have all the stats. He's not sitting there with a book and he's going, yeah. So I vetted everybody in
be
the
like
entire
200
community,
people,
and I
right?
found that this many people are racist.
Well, it's silly to use percentages here, okay?
Yeah, it
Instead of saying
definitely is.
5%, just take screenshots and clarify, okay, what do you mean by racist bullshit? He's saying that this guy got bullied off because of racism, essentially.
Uh-huh.
So, and since he's not clarifying, like, what do you mean by that? And that's where I had the discussion with him on Twitter, right?
Mhm.
Because I wrote to him. I mean, I know we're jumping a bit ahead, but it's important.
Okay.
I didn't want to be a cunt. I actually gave him advice. Because I said, you should probably explain what exactly BuzzX was victim to on Discord. Otherwise, you're just criticizing a small minority of nameless fans for something that's not entirely clear. And if BuzzX does not want this information public, why post this in the first place?
Yeah.
And I think that's entirely valid.
It goes back to the Wolf situation where I'm not entirely sure if Wolf would have wanted that anomaly situation to have been made public. I may be wrong, but again,
Yeah.
it's not Southpaw's place to bring these things up.
Also, to clarify, right? BuzzX left the EFAP Discord at some point in September. So again, it's not even really all that relevant. And if it is relevant, then the racist bullshit has to be like massive. It has to be insane, right? It has to be something that's actually a liable offense.
So, again, it comes into the interesting realm of if it, like, with this Southpaw video that we're doing at the minute, for a while I've been saying, like, I think this will still be relevant in 5 weeks, 10 weeks, a year, because I don't think Southpaw's going to change. So if we were to apply that to the situations within the EFAP Discord of, like, if there is rampant racism in there, or if there is a small but vocal minority of people that are constantly or consistently being racist, well then that's always going to be a valid issue. But the issue arises whenever you go and search for that evidence and it's very difficult to find. And then I think,
Yeah.
I don't know if you bring this up later, Fries, but I think somebody mentioned about most of it being in, like, some racial abuse being in VCs.
No. Okay, so I mean, I said this to him on Twitter as advice.
Okay.
I also said the examples he brings up are pretty minor and vague, And this was in response to another person.
Yeah.
The examples he brings up are pretty minor and vague, considering he's been dwelling on this for so long. And then he took a screenshot of a private conversation he had with BuzzX.
Did he have the permission to do that from BuzzX?
I think so. I'm not entirely sure.
Okay.
But BuzzX said, you can... Oh, wait. Never mind. He actually said, you can tell them. So he did have permission. I apologize for that, Southpaw, if you're listening to this.
That'll be the last apology you get.
Yeah. Alright, so BuzzX said, you can tell them people dropping N-bombs in the VC I was in. People who were clearly not black. I don't know them though, I left ages ago.
What?
So...
You don't know!
No. This is the problem, right? This is right, this is insane. Southpaw said, BuzzX went through racist bullshit firsthand. When I asked him to clarify, it is some nameless people, he don't even know who it is, just said the N-word casually in some of the VCs he was in.
Do you know who else is the N-word, Fries? Do you know who else says it?
Pretty much everyone on EFAP.
The fucking host!
I feel like everyone...
The hosts have said it!
And the mods have said it, and I found examples of Southpaw saying it.
Oh, well, that's okay. He had the pass. He was allowed to say it. And the ones on EFAP, Fringy said they were allowed to say it. This is so fucking retarded. How the hell does this guy know? Or this person, BuzzX, how do they know for definite these other people aren't black? If we're gonna say, for the sake of the argument, in order for you to say this specific word, you have to be a part of this exclusive group. You have to be a part of this group in order to say the word. Okay. How do you know that they're not black? Is every single person in that Discord...
himself.
Are they all FaceTiming simultaneously? I fucking doubt it. Can you just hear...
To be fair, right?
I can hear the whiteness in their voice, Fries.
I didn't know SK was black either.
This is the thing, right? Somebody had this discussion a while ago about Fringy, where I think Fringy said the N-word, and somebody was like, "Oh, Fringy's racist," and then somebody else was like, "Yeah, no, Fringy's actually black." To which the person responded, "Fringy's not black; he's Australian," as if to go, Australians can't be black. What the fuck? And stuff like this, you don't know. You can't possibly know, right? I think with somebody like me, right? I probably have the whitest sounding voice on the face of the fucking planet. You could probably infer based off my voice, I am not black. Alright? You'd be wrong, no. But how do you know, right? With somebody like Alpha, with somebody like... There's even people within our own Discord community. Unless you've seen their faces, you cannot say for certain that they are not black. You do not know. And also...
Same, bro?
What was that?
Sorry, I couldn't hear you then. You was cutting out.
You're cutting out pretty badly.
Am I?
Not anymore.
Okay, well, you're back to normal now, so it's okay.
Oh, okay.
Just that last sentence you said.
Just repeat that last point.
Well, yeah, basically my point is, how the fuck can you tell what their ethnicity is through their voice? Like, for definite. You can't. There's no way. Unless you ask all of them, like, each individual person, are you black? Are you black? Are you black? Which would be really fucking awkward in the middle of a conversation. Or on top of that, every single person in the Muller Discord are all simultaneously screen recording their face? Well, that never fucking happens. Even whenever I was in there with friends, that never happened.
No. I don't think people saying the N-word casually should be, this big thing, right?
This is the thing,
and
right?
Here's... I just want to say, BuzzX... And I said this to him on Twitter, to Southpaw. BuzzX can leave the Discord for any reason he wants to. He can leave for that reason.
Yeah.
But why would you make this public drama? Why would you try and build this up to be, he was actually a victim to racist attacks, and then it just turns out to be some N-words.
Well, I feel like, right.
Like, why do this?
I feel like something like this, right? If you're from that position that BuzzX is in, maybe there is an element of you're hurt by it, or you're very offended by these things, and you don't want somebody else to go through the same situation. So maybe you go to Southpaw and you're like, I don't know, you're a voice for the community. You can tell these guys to just stop saying words like this. But there's better ways of doing it. Like, if you really want to make a difference, probably like maybe say something to the mods. Say something to. I get Southpaw. A lot of people maybe see Southpaw as somebody that could speak up for them, like be a voice for them in the community. But again, I'm not entirely convinced on what his convictions or what his motives are for doing things. Like, as I said before, whenever I watched the Spider-Man 2 video, my opinion and perception of him changed. For the better overall. But I'm still not entirely convinced whether or not... I don't know for definite, because I'm not him. I think I can make inferences, but I don't know if he's just clout chasing. I don't know if he's just saying these things for people to react, or people to respond, or for hot takes. I don't know. Would he really be the first person I would go to if I want to get the word out there? I mean, at the very least, he's going to be fucking obsessed by it, if nothing else. It seems like a strange decision to me, personally. It's... If you really want to make a difference, I just don't know if that's necessarily the best way to go about it. You know?
Yeah. And if we want to go with the standard that's saying the N-word casually is racist, then Southpaw himself is a racist.
Because he
so
said
does
himself.
he really want to go with that standard? Well, he's used the N-word casually himself. I posted that to him on Twitter. If you look through the things I've shared with you in the group chat.
Yeah. They should be. They're hopefully going to be up on screen, assuming I know how to function.
Assume you know how to edit.
Okay,
Yeah.
let's. Yeah, I love you too, Fries.
Yeah, I mean, it's very silly drama, to be honest.
Yeah.
Very pointless. It's very pointless drama to make public. And then after I said those things to him on Twitter, he said to me, "All I did was send you a screen cap of what Buzzax said. As soon as he sent it, chill the fuck out. Here's more." So now he's giving me more reasons as to why Buzzax left the Discord. And by the way, these reasons have nothing to do with racism. It's something entirely unrelated.
And the key reason that Buzzax gave for leaving the Discord was racism. Or the key reason that Southpaw gave.
That's the key reason Southpaw gave for Buzzax.
Okay.
He said Buzzax went through enough racist bullshit, he had to leave the Discord. And now Buzzax himself is saying, it's more than just M-bombs though. It's the political hot takes, the thinly veiled homophobia, the almost blatant sexism.
Which goes beyond just racism. That's not just racism.
Again, it's not just racism, it's also massive claims, and you don't use any examples, and you're being pretty vague about it, and you're talking about a Discord you left months ago, so it might not even be relevant today. This is insane.
It's
like, what do you even say to this? Like, can you even respond to thinly veiled homophobia? What do you mean by that? You need to define what you mean by that. Blatant sexism. Okay, people make jokes about women. Is that sexist?
And this is where we really definitely need to have a definition of terms of, at the very least, even within the Muller Discord or within the EFAP community or even within Southpaw's own communities, people need to define what they determine to be acceptable or unacceptable or racist or not racist. If Muller's Discord says that saying, like, shortening the word for transgender, they say that that is an acceptable word to use within the Discord, well, I mean, it's a very difficult one because I feel like nobody necessarily is absolutely correct on what the definitions of like whenever Alpha's talking about the Overton window, what we consider to be acceptable today probably won't be acceptable tomorrow. So it's very difficult to set standards for a lot of these places. So the Muller Discord probably have changed their standards from whenever it was first made. I can probably guarantee there's been things that have been acceptable in the past that maybe aren't now. And for all Buzzax knows, these things have been changed. But because he's not necessarily a part of that community anymore, I'm not entirely sure. I get you want to share your own experience, but I'm not entirely sure are you necessarily the most well-versed or well-read person in the subject, considering you're not even there anymore. You left.
And it has confirmed by Southpaw that Buzzax is very far left. And I think that explains a lot. I think that explains why he doesn't really like the EFAP Discord all that much. Why he got sick
Possibly.
of it.
I don't want to infer. I think it would be fair to say that a lot of the takes within the EFAP community are probably I don't know. I don't really spend as much time in there as I used to. I'm there every now and again. I feel like you get a lot of you get definitely a range of different people. Like some people probably quite obviously in the left, some people quite obviously in the right. Some people that just don't want to talk about politics. And
Would you go as far as to say that it's toxic like BuzzX? Just asking.
to be honest, I feel like at times it can be, if left unregulated, it can be toxic. Some people's behaviors can be like out of line at times, but if that's ever the case, either you say it yourself, you point out to those people. I mean, this is the thing, right? The more I think about it, I don't even know if I'd use the word toxic. I kind of feel like even the people that are like purposefully cunts, they just do it in jest. Which is what I find going into the VCs, where people will say to me the exact same thing in a VC that they'll have messaged me before in one of the Discord chats. And because of the inclination of tone and all these different things and the context and all, I can quite clearly see in the VC, oh, this is a joke. Oh, okay, I understand now. Without the context of hearing the tone of voice, without the context of having the context for the whole conversation or knowing that person very well, I don't know. Like I can't really tell. I can, and again, even if I'm in a VC and somebody says something and I maybe don't know them very well, or I don't know if they're being sarcastic, like there's probably actually been times where I've said something to you, Fries, where you're like, I don't know if he's actually, like, I'm listening to him because he has a sarcastic tone. I can't tell if he's taking the piss or not.
Yeah.
And because of stuff like that, it's very difficult for you to make an overarching claim where saying these people are toxic is a very difficult thing to do in the sense that, again, you're not necessarily defining, like, what do you mean by toxic? Well, I don't want to get into semantics constantly, but do we mean toxic in the sense that
we have to get into semantics if he hasn't defined his terms?
Yeah,
I mean, I would ask BuzzX, what do you mean by toxic? Because that's way too broad.
I think, look, I'll be completely honest. I think some people can be toxic, like in every community. I think it's probably almost a non-statement. Like, there's almost no point in me saying that.
Well, okay,
it's
the
definitely
bigger community gets, the more likely it is of becoming toxic. That's a natural outcome.
Well, yeah, you're
I wouldn't
gonna get.
say the EFAP Discord as a whole is toxic. I wouldn't go that far.
Fuck no. Like, if there is toxicity within the EFAP Discord, which, as I've said before, I don't even know necessarily what BuzzX means by that word specifically, but
I don't know what he means by any of what he said.
I'll give him the benefit of the doubt. But assuming that I'm sure, right? There are cunts in the EFAP Discord. There's cunts in our Discord. Sure, fuck, I'm one of them. But you have a very large community. You have a lot of people in there that come from a lot of different backgrounds, countries, races, whatever. There probably will be bad people in there. There will be a lot of good people in there. From my experience, I find that most of the people in there are quite nice people who are willing to have very long discussions. Quite a lot of them are quite interesting for the most part, and a lot of them are very nice people. But I can definitely understand how you could have a very bad experience in there. Like, I've spoken to a lot of people who have, and I feel like part of the reason why I think somebody like Southpaw is becoming so popular is he's kind of like, even though he's in the EFAP sphere, he's kind of like the anti-EFAP in a way, where he's like, he's speaking out for the minorities in EFAP, where he's like giving these smaller people like BuzzX a voice, like people like SK, where he's doing full videos on how Spider-Man 2 is bad, which, you know, all the part 2, if that's what you want to do, go ahead, fine. But there's a manner in which you do it. There's like things, there's almost like unwritten rules and written rules as well, where you just shouldn't be a cunt sometimes. There's some things you don't need to do or don't need to say. He crosses so many of these lines where he'll do things that Mahler deems unacceptable, but Mahler doesn't call him out for it. He'll do things that he himself deems unacceptable, But this inconsistency, the lack of, it's just a constant hypocrisy with him, where he's doing and saying things.
Here's the thing, right? He called me a fucking tool because I pointed out he also said the N-word.
Yeah, can we read
And I'm
this?
just like, do you not see the hypocrisy?
So he goes, I want you to go back and reread this and realize what a fucking tool you were. Quote unquote. What did BuzzAx go through? Provide you a screenshot of Buzz in his own words with no commentary of my own. Well, you said that word too, as if I said anything myself. Fuck's sake.
What?
First of all, that wasn't my only point. I made several points. That's the only thing you responded to.
This is like an oversimplification and breakdown and straw man. Fucking straw man of Fries.
Oh, shit. Straw man.
Yeah, like Fries is like, okay, have you got any evidence?
Southpaw's gonna love that shit.
Yeah. So he can fucking cry about that, straw man. It's what you did. You silly bitch. So like Fries is like, okay, where is your evidences of these claims? And your evidence is a guy making the claims, making similar claims. You haven't got actual screenshots, receipts, and things like that. And then when you bring a guy being like, when your evidence is a guy being like, oh, EFAP is so toxic because they said the N-bomb, they dropped the N-word. People who weren't black, who clearly weren't black, are dropping the N-word in VC. And then Fries goes, wait a minute, you're saying that too. That is pointing out a hypocrisy. You are criticizing EFAP for these reasons that you do. This is the problem here. Why, how can you not grasp that? How are you such a child as you cannot grasp that? Such an easy concept, yet they're so obtuse. He's so obtuse about it.
And I also pointed out, right, Southpaw complains that some fan referred to Jay as a tranny. He's done that to himself in a derogatory manner to an actual transsexual person, no less, just a couple of months ago. And then the comment reads, Jesus fucking Christ, this tranny is about the dumbest motherfucker I've dealt with on Twitter. And he actually said sorry for that, but I don't think he saw the hypocrisy.
I mean, again, it's like, it's such a strange position for for him to put himself in for a start. Like, it's.
Yeah, but I want you to see that. I think I just posted.
Okay, yep, it was wrong too. Also, very funny how you framed what I said as complaining that someone unironically called Jay a tranny, when literally all I did was mention that the reason they got blocked by Jay, which they admitted in their post, received support. Because you know, that's literally what happened. Why do you talk like that?
No, that's not what happened. You brought up that
you said they were transphobic.
Referred to transsexual as tranny. That was the point of contention.
And he mentioned that as being transphobic, I'd be right in saying, yeah?
In all honesty, I think the only reason he said that was because he wanted to have the last word. Otherwise, I would have won the argument, essentially.
But I mean, with regards to, he said the guy that called Jay that, he was referring to that person as a transphobic person, yeah?
Well, no, the point of contention was that this guy, who got blocked by Jay, referred to transsexual people, as trannies.
Okay, and Southpaw was saying that that was transsexual, or that was transphobic.
He was bringing that up as an example of, people being racist, sexist, transphobic, whatever.
And then Southpaw uses that himself. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, he apologized for that. And I think we need to make that very clear, otherwise Southpaw's gonna get mad. You did apologize, I just don't think you saw the hypocrisy. So, yeah.
Wait, his apology was, yep, and that was wrong too? Is that what you're referencing to as his apology?
Yes, that was his apology.
Did he apologize to Did he apologize to the actual person? Like, obviously we don't know the DMs.
He apologized to me, he didn't apologize to...
He apologized to you!
That's just lip service to win the argument. That's what he's doing right there.
Shit, I didn't even think about that.
Yo, could you imagine, right?
That was wrong too. Okay.
Could you imagine?
I don't think you would let someone off.
Could you imagine? I call Fries a racial slur, and then I apologize to Alpha for saying that to Fries because Alpha calls me out on it.
Yeah, and all you say is, yeah, but we're in the middle of a discussion, and then you go, oh, well, you're such a racist, you're such an anti-Semitic or something like that, and I'm like, well, you're racist because you called Fries the N-word. Yeah, well, that was wrong too, but you're worse. You're worse. You're just as bad.
Oh.
Like, oh wow. Really?
Argument wrong. I just decimated this guy.
Yeah, I'm like, that's not going to cut it, mate. You're a hypocrite.
For the sake of the argument, right? For all we know, he could have went into this person's DMs and apologized and so on and so forth, but we don't know. Like,
No, I don't think he did.
Based off this, I'd assume maybe not. I don't know though.
I think he's just weasel wording his way out of being pinned down.
Because I brought up evidence that he couldn't argue against.
I
Yeah,
think
He has to weasel his way out.
I think he likes being. I think he likes giving the voice to the little guy. He likes being the acolyte of the forgotten. He likes this the position that he has where he can call the EFAP community out for being racist or transphobic, and by doing that, he kind of, I feel like he almost gives himself more followers that way, because like on face value, nobody's gonna disagree with him. Like, nobody's gonna say, oh yeah, racism's good, woo. Obviously it's fucking wrong. And everybody's gonna get behind that. Everybody's gonna get behind the ideas that he's preaching, because for the most part they're gonna be taught in schools, universities, through the media. Everybody agrees on a lot of these ideas that he's propagating. Without having the context that he's actually... Without having the context of the fact that he's violated the rules and the precedents and the things that he's called people out for, he's doing the very same things himself. He just forgets to mention them.
Yeah, and what I find so strange, right? It's not like he's doing this to another community.
Doing it to his!
The EFAP community. He's a regular on EFAP. He's like one of the top dogs.
He's doing
So
it to...
why are you doing this to your fans? I don't understand. I don't get it.
I take it one step further, mate. Not only is he doing it to his own fans, right? If he wants to destroy his own community or pit them against each other, I mean, fucking hell, it's a shitty thing to do. But I guess it's your community, nobody can stop you. You do it to your friend's community. Like, as I understand, you're friends with Mueller. Why would you want to do that to your friend's community? I get, right, if you want to bring up these things as examples of racism and, oh, these things are bad, I want to get rid of them. Okay, yeah, fair enough. But then,
what people you're talking about.
well, if you're consistent with the arguments that you've raised, you're calling Rags a racist, you're calling people like you yourself are being transphobic. A lot of the mods, like even the hosts themselves are racist and transphobic based off the principles and precedents that you set. Now you have to be consistent. And if you're not consistent, then don't fucking speak. You have no integrity if you just change.
Shut the fuck up.
If you're not going to be consistent, you don't have any integrity at that point. But the thing is, right, I would really respect this guy if he was to come out and go, like, instead of trying to make examples of other people with these, like, gotchas, where, oh, this person said this, see, and I'm going to post it on Twitter and you're all going to go after him. Maybe that's not his intention, but that's what happens, right? Regardless of what his intention is, that's what the conclusion is. A reasonable person would know that if I, with a few thousand followers, posted a tweet from Fries with no followers, with something taken out of context, where Fries says something silly, fucking hell, of course my audience is going to go after him. There's no way I wouldn't know that. But what I would really respect is, instead of making examples out of other people, if he was to point out something he himself did, and go, I did this in the past, I wasn't educated enough, I didn't understand these things well enough, and in hindsight, I apologize to this person, and I apologize to anybody who I may have offended. I'd really respect that. Like, fucking good on you, mate. You're actually teaching other people, and you're kind of throwing yourself under the fire a little bit. You're putting yourself in the firing line. You're doing something quite honorable in that sense, where you're making an example of yourself. But to do it to other people when you're just as bad, if not worse, because you're so unprincipled that you can't hold to one position, right? You're like, you chop and change like with the turn of a hat. You're so unprincipled that you can't decide, like, is this racist? Is it not racist? I don't know. I'm gonna do both. I want to have my cake and eat it too. Choose a side, right?
Eat your cake and have it too.
Yeah. Wait,
I was told that.
How is it? How is that phrase? Is it have your cake and eat it too?
Have your cake and eat it too. I was taught by the great Kaczynski.
Who?
The
Who's
Unabomber.
Krasinski? Oh, okay.
Ted Kaczynski. He said that. Like, that's how he got caught, because he would say it the proper way when everyone reversed it, and they found that in his letters, and that's how that's how they got him.
It's such an outlandish thing to bring up in the middle of it. Chat about Southpaw.
Well, I'm just saying, it's correct, isn't it? It's punctually correct. We're going to be historically and punctually correct over the saying of have your cake and eat it too.
You've derailed me, my friend.
Alright. Well, to bring it back to the topic, right? It's no wonder that some people, I mean, it's still a vocal minority, but they exist. It's no wonder that some people dislike Southpaw. And this is one of the reasons why. I would actually say this is the major reason, at least from what I've seen. Like, everything before was relatively minor, but it stacked up over time. I think this is pretty massive. And I honestly think Southpaw is kind of idiotic for what he did, making such a big number out of nothing.
Okay, let's have it.
What did you say?
Let's have at it.
Let's have at it, yeah. Alpha, do you remember Southpaw saying Southpaw derangement syndrome? It's definitely a thing.
Yeah, he's got like this weird thing where he will just like control F and then find every single negative thing about him, and then he's like, guys, there is like a derangement syndrome. I'm basically like Trump, because there is a Southpaw derangement syndrome already. It's like, no, dude, every YouTuber has people who disagree with them. You're not special.
Also, Trump did not come up with Trump derangement syndrome himself.
Yeah.
When you come up with a derangement syndrome related to your character,
It's kind of cringe.
that's very narcissistic. It's also kind of cringe, yeah.
Yeah.
And also, now his fans are bringing up, people, they hate Southpaw for absolutely no reason.
I
There's
just
no
like,
reason to hate Southpaw at all. He's done nothing wrong.
do we want to go like we can do it at the end, but I think we've got a pretty long list of reasons why we dislike him at this point.
Yeah.
Do you want to go through it now?
I mean, fuck it, Alpha, lead the way.
Yeah, he has like a massive narcissistic tendency to try and get his fans to mob people. He needs constant reassurance. What's the word, Fries?
Validation.
Validation. He needs constant validation. He's like, have you ever seen It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia?
I haven't. I need to.
I was going to say,
I haven't either, fuck.
He reminds me of this character, Sweet D, who's like, I'm good, right? To the therapist, I'm good, right? Tell me I'm good. I'm good. Tell me I'm good. Tell me I'm good. Tell me I'm good, right? He reminds me of Sweet D in that sense.
I mean, he is a massive suck up to Mahler. I mean, he especially needs validation from him. And he uses Mahler a lot in his videos, either for the thumbnails or just for commentary.
I don't like how he constantly derails EFAP. They're talking about movies, and then he just cries about comments about him while live.
That happens a lot. That happens every EFAP he's on.
It's a bit strange. I mean, my main criticism is like more fundamental flaws with his character in terms of his inconsistency, his hypocrisy, where he'll bring something up as an issue, and if you want to say that's an issue, that's fine. But then if there's evidence of you or people that you're supposed to be affiliated with doing those exact things as well, but you're not calling those people out, I mean, that makes you just as bad. Like, if anything, it kind of makes you worse, because you're actually, as I said before, you're the one that's trying to stand for something. Like, nobody else is pretending to be more than they are. Nobody else is pretending to try and be an advocate for these people. You're simultaneously, you're gaslighting, but you're also trying to be like a standing behind people like for a movement or something. As I can't respect somebody like that. I appreciate he is talented in terms of his video that he did, but in terms of everything else, I mean, there's a lot of things to work
not to sound melodramatic, but I do think it's a shame, because when he's just covering videos on EFAP or for his own stream, or the Spider-Man 2 video, I think it's decent.
Yeah,
And he's definitely got talent.
yeah, 100%.
But the problem is, as you said, everything related around his character, it's he needs a lot of work, and he could do so much better than this.
And it's not to say that he is not like irreparable, right? Currently he is tearing the community apart. He's tearing the EFAP community apart. He's tearing his own community apart, pitting them against each other by saying that people in my own community are toxic and these things. Wherein, again, like, I think I've probably seen some of the things that he's referencing, but in my experience, they generally tend to be jokes. Like, if I was to use a Wayne Manor Discord as a key example, they have some, let's say, racially ambiguous roles for their Discord. I mean, I guess it's up to him to decide whether or not that he deems that racist, I guess.
I mean, who knows? Who knows at this point?
Southpaw does.
He's the one who knows.
You know the Southpaw way? Hey, by the way, Alpha, are you Southpaw or Orthodox?
Orthodox.
My guy! Have you ever fought Southpaw?
I tried to go switch. Oh, this sounds like an LGBT thing. I tried to switch.
I tried to transition, I just couldn't do it.
Oh,
Yeah.
Alpha, what are you telling us something now?
No, I try and go Southpaw every now and then, but I'm primarily Orthodox.
See,
Primarily based.
So
Yeah.
I have to be honest, right? I was Orthodox. I tried to transition. I just got physically abused for it so much. It was horrible.
Oh, yeah.
I couldn't go through with it in the end. I just had to stay as I was.
People just kept violently attacking me when I switched.
For no reason.
I actually get punched in the face and the stomach. I just, I mean, some
Couldn't
people
do
are
it.
just toxic, man. Anyway,
In
Fries
fact,
could-
you know what, Alpha, hey, Josh and Alpha, let's
Uh-huh.
go a step further, okay?
Oh no.
Parts of the EFAP audience, from what I've seen, right? They're rapists, murderers, pedophiles, and criminals. The least bad thing last.
And
Jesus
some
Christ,
attitude.
Fries!
Yeah,
some
and it could be more than 5%, it could be less than 5%, but it is there. It is a rampant issue. I don't have to prove it with examples. I can just say it.
I mean,
yeah.
the sad thing is, like, the likelihood that there is like one rapist within that community is probably higher than we'd like it to be.
No. Okay, my example. Bora used to be a part of the EFAP community,
Okay.
and he's a pedophile. So, based on that example, I can say that parts of the EFAP audience are pedophiles, and that's completely justified.
I mean, if we want to look into things like the Wolf Discord and stuff like that, it is quite a big issue in a lot of those communities.
I love that. Fries was like, they're rapists, they're this, they're pedophiles. And do you know what I was thinking of? And some, I assume, are good people.
Jesus
Some, I
Christ.
assume, are good people, but they have to go back. They have to go back.
Fries, you're a racist. That's it.
Oh yeah, it's true, I guess.
Even though you're black.
Yes, I am black. Okay.
Do you want to get us back on track? Seeing as you're the podcast host for this episode.
I mean, I think we've pretty much concluded everything that needs to be. We've at least gone through most of the evidence, right?
Yeah.
There's some minor things that we could discuss, but I think we've covered everything that needs to be talked about.
Can we get some clips for the intro? I'll do like a compilation of like the worst things, the most egregious things we say about Southpaw.
Maybe, perhaps.
Feel like try to think of something like I think I got a few good ones earlier, like, oh, this guy's destroying the commentary community, stuff like that. Yeah,
This guy is cringe. He's destroying the community because of his cringe.
it has to be more egregious than that. It has to be like, this guy is actually the B-Tech Wolf. He really is. Come on, Alpha, you're good at these. You can really make somebody very insecure. I know that firsthand.
He's got a terrible beard.
Oh, yo, take that back. That's too far.
Terrible beard.
No, come on.
You take that back right now.
You can't.
His haircut His short back and sides is too high, and he looks like one of the twin babies from Rugrats.
Dude, he's got a fucking Nazi haircut, dude. What is up with that?
Oh god.
Is he a fucking Nazi or something?
You know, Richard Spencer wannabe.
Yeah, this bit's getting cut, boys.
No, this is the best part. Dude, let's start off the Southpaw episode with, is this guy a fucking Nazi?
God Christ.
I mean, he's got all the hallmarks. He's got the haircut. He rampantly and casually uses the N-word. He calls people trannies. What a Nazi. Am I right, guys?
He has all the hallmarks. He does.
I'm truly horrified.
If I cut this entire end section and I just have that in the introduction, it's just like somebody goes, "Is this guy a Nazi?" and then nobody has any context for why we said that. Hey, I can't find that in this video. It was in the introduction. Oh, they must have left it out.
Yeah.
Oh, Christ.
So Josh, do you think that was worth covering?
Do you think it was worth covering? That's the more important question.
Definitely did. I definitely did.
I think it's as important
Because
today as
Josh,
it will be.
nobody else has talked about this. Everybody else backs him up about this, which I find strange.
I get the impression that nobody's checking him, and I'm very conscious that I don't want that to be our. I've tried my best throughout this episode to try and be as favorable as possible and try and give him the benefit of the doubt in a lot of places. I don't want to sit here and say that this guy is like the worst guy ever, because fuck, he's not. Like, there are worse people in the community, but the damage that he's doing from within can't go unsaid, and nobody's calling him out for it. Nobody's checking him.
I would say he's the worst EFAP regular by a long shot.
I'd probably agree with that, unless like somebody could come up with somebody better. Like, unless Borgie went on EFAP. But
no, because he won't be a regular.
Oh, fair enough.
He'll be a one-time guest.
If even.
And also, dude, there's no way Borgie's ever gonna be an EFAP.
Exactly. I mean, unless SK takes off, you never know. But
he's not.
God, that delivery. He tries.
I mean, you know, he's got a good heart.
He's got a good heart. He tries his best. I love you, Ethan.
Oh god. But this is not gonna be of the episode, dude.
Yeah, I know. It might be. You never know. I might add it in post. Yeah, this could be a whole mismatch.
I love you, Ethan.
Yeah.
A fucking confession in the video.
Fuck. Well, I suppose it's probably better for my image if they know I'm gay, right?
Well, Alpha, do you think it was worth covering?
Yeah, it was pretty cool. Pretty cool just telling this guy get a grip.